Do you manage a product or service and you're wondering how you can delight your customer in new and exciting ways? Maybe you have a product launch and you're worried that customers aren't going to find or buy your product. Well, we have a solution for you. Design thinking is a framework that was popularized by IDEO and Stanford, and something that I'm sure you've heard a lot about online. And this is why my partner Christine and I wrote our ebook, What is Design Thinking and Why is it so popular? So popular. I'm really pleased to introduce my partner Christine Reynolds, and I'm Andrew Edwards, founders of Design Ace. And today we're going to be talking to you about our ebook, why we wrote it, and how you can take these incredible frameworks and incorporate them into your everyday of working. Christine, why don't you start off by telling us what is design thinking, and then we'll get into why it's so popular.
Yeah, design thinking. There's a lot of definitions out there on what design thinking is. And what we've aimed to do with this book is help sort of crystallize that definition and help you apply it to your everyday. So, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a framework, as Andrew mentioned, popularized by IDEO and D School at Stanford. But it's also a mindset. And I think you nailed it, Andrew. It's putting that user, that customer, whoever you're designing for, at the center of your process, right? And making sure that you're connecting with them, understanding them, their needs, their pain points, their challenges, what's motivating them. Most importantly, understanding how your product or service impacts their life, fits into their life in some way. So, what our book is aimed at doing is taking you through that sort of 5 step process, starting with empathy and helping you get closer to your users with new methods, tools, and sort of bite sized tips and tricks that can help you start embedding it right away, whether you're right in the middle of a project, you're just about to start on one, or you want to take a retrospective sort of lens on what went well, what could we have done differently. So, in a nutshell, design thinking is really about that user focused lens and innovating based on the needs of the user versus the whims of the creator, which would be us and our product teams.
That's really well said, and why I love working with you and learning with you. And something that you touched on were two things that I'd like to dive into more. One, you mentioned that there's five steps to the framework. So let's talk about that, and then we can get into the different bite sizes that we've created so that people who are reading this book can start using these concepts right away and embed them into their teams and their products without having to, go through a huge course or taking on the burden of, doing a 4-year degree. This is something that we really wanted folks to walk away with and be able to use today after reading it. So
Yeah.
through the 5 steps.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to say too is just this is for everybody. You don't have to be a designer to practice design thinking. It really is about training your mindset and asking the right kind of questions. Typically, questions like why? Why is that important? Why are you doing that? Why would you buy that? Why have you used that in the past? So, going through the 5 step framework, it's also important to know that these 5 steps are actually not linear. So, like I said earlier, whether you're in the middle of a project, starting it off, taking a retro look, finding what step or phase in the framework will best suit you is important. So, I'll go through them sort of in the order intended, but know that when you learn new things throughout the process, you're able to sort of take steps back, take steps forward, and move throughout it. But for argument's sake,
Right.
sorry?
Do what feels right.
Do what feels right, is actually trusting your instincts is a big piece of being a good design thinking professional. So starting with empathy, which really is it should be sort of present throughout an entire project lifestyle, but it's also a really great starting point and the first step in the framework, where this is really concerned with understanding everything there is to know about your user, that process or that touch point or channel that they're interacting in, how they're feeling and thinking, what they're telling their friends and family, and having a full holistic understanding of that user, that product and service, that channel, and the ecosystem that they're sort of operating within. So empathy is really about just stopping, slowing down to speed up, as I say, making sure everybody on the team is immersed and understands what it's like to walk a mile in the shoes of that user before moving into the second sort of hexagon in the framework, which is define. So taking what we've learned in that empathy phase, where we've connected with users, maybe even sat down with a few of them, we're going to take all the things we've learned from them and our stakeholders and our business data, our analytics, and we're going to use that to define our problem. So if you can think about empathy as almost, diverging out and learning everything we can, define is where we take what we've learned and start to converge and try to come up with a problem statement, something that we can anchor in. And as we start to build or design solutions, we can come back to that problem statement and make sure that we're still solving the right problem. The third stage, once you've defined your problem, is to start ideating solutions. It's often the most unstructured part of the process. It can be the most fun,
It's
but
my
it's your favorite. Yes, you are the idea man. But it can also be one of those phases that gets a little away from you if you don't put some parameters and some controls on it. So our book really talks about how to kick off ideation sessions properly, how to anchor them around that user or that key pain point or need, and to use that to sort of blast off into space and think of all the ideas, big and small.
And I just want to say that as somebody who's managed a product without design thinking as my guiding compass, ideation is the stage that I would always jump into first. I like I said, it's my favorite. I love ideas, and often that's where you can get a little lost. You can create chaos if you haven't done your homework and empathize with your customer, empathize with your users, and then also defined the problem, as Christine said. So ideation is, I think, the first instinct for a lot of us to jump in and want to, just start brainstorming and coming up with great solutions. But what Christine has really taught me is it's through empathy and through defining that you're able to come at ideation with a really professional lens and really root yourself and your ideas in what your customers need and what are the objectives that you're trying to solve for them and for your organization. So
Yeah.
it's
I
a
think a really good way to think about it is when you're buying someone a birthday present, okay? 9 times out of 10, you're gonna ask them what they want for their birthday, or you know them well enough to know exactly what they would like for their birthday. Yet when it comes to business decisions, multi-million dollar, multi-million subscriber impact decisions, a lot of times we just sit down and go, I wonder what should I buy them for their birthday, versus just doing the simple thing and asking. So it's kind of funny to see that dynamic a little bit. So if we apply some of our more thoughtful traits as human beings to our business and design processes, we can often answer questions quicker, with less collateral damage, and we have more of a chance of getting it right the first time. So ideation is super important, but without empathy and defining the problem, ideation can spiral into that whims of the creator sort of mentality, where
nebulous.
you end up spending time and money on something that you're not even really sure a user will need, let alone like. So ideation is one of the most important phases, but it's in the middle for a reason. There are things to do before ideation, empathize and define, and there are things to do after ideation, which is prototype and test. Now, ideation, prototyping, and testing, you can also think of a little bit of a cycle. You can ideate, you can prototype some concepts from that ideation, and then you can test them with those users before going back to ideation and using that feedback to build on your ideas. In the business, we call it the break and the build. So we have an idea, we've prototyped it, we've tested it. Now we got to break that idea and build it again. So
And
that's
what
sort of the way the last three kind of work together. So prototyping is making something tangible from your ideas and your concepts, starting with something low fidelity like a paper prototype. People have made stuff with Lego and Play-Doh to showcase what something may look or feel like. And then moving into testing with real users, those people that you identified in your empathy stage, call on them, figure out what they think about the product. And from there, once you've kind of gone through the phase, you can decide, do I need to go back to empathy? Is there gaps in our knowledge and our understanding? Did we maybe misdefine the problem and we need to go back and redefine it with all the feedback and learning we've got from prototyping and testing? Do we need to go back to the drawing board, Andrew's favorite step, and brainstorm 100 more ideas? Did we maybe miss something in our prototype? Did we forget to add a feature? or maybe our testing needs another round. Maybe we didn't ask the right questions the first time. So you can see how you can kind of go back and forth. There's no right or wrong way to go through design thinking, except for if you don't start with empathy. So that would be my sort of jumping off point or advice to anyone reading the book or not. If you can empathize, if you can build that skill, you're already well on your way to becoming a human centered designer.
That's brilliant. One of the things I really love about our book is we talk about how you can take these 5 stages and implement them effectively in a way that's simple and straightforward, but also powerful and dynamic. And what I mean by that is our new way of working in 2023. We have hybrid, we have remote, we have co-located, in person. The whole spectrum of ways of working is now at our fingertips and our reality. And what we really have tried to center in this book is ways to apply design thinking in all of these new fabulous ways that we connect with each other.
Mhm.
So we've tried to give examples of workshops, ideas around prototyping that you can do either in person, that you can do remotely, that you can do if you're, split between 2 office locations. And something Christine touched on that I really love is the idea of starting with low fidelity prototypes and building your way up. In the past, designing apps, we would always jump in at let's create screens, let's create mock-ups that people can
Let's just build it. Yeah. At
build it so somebody can interact with
least
it.
we have it. Yeah.
If you build it, they will come. And Christine has taught me, the fun you can have with Lego, the fun you can have just with drawing and sketching and utilizing some of these low fidelity concepts. So that's just one example of many of the options that we lay out. And we're very
Yeah.
proud of the fact that in this book we link to our custom templates that we've designed together for either in person or remote. And Christina, I'd love for you to touch on maybe what your favorite template is of ours that we've included in our ebook.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's just to touch on what you've said as well, the difference I think with our book and even some of our content is it really does put the reader in the driver's seat. So again, whether you're a designer, a business person, an analyst, maybe you're just starting out in your first job, this book is really written and designed to allow you to safely test out some of these tools and concepts. And as Andrew mentioned, 2023, 2022, 2020, 2021, new ways of working have really, really just thrown people for a loop. What used to be easier to do, in person in the office has now become a necessity online or in hybrid situations. So we really have made sure that any activities or tools or resources we've provided come with a in-person, remote, or a hybrid sort of lens. So we've got digital virtual whiteboards for those who are sort of online or in hybrid situations. We have printable templates, as Andrew mentioned. My favorite always has been, always will be, is an empathy map. As I mentioned, if I give you one word of advice on where to start with empathy. Empathy always leads to innovation when it's sort of done with the person or the user at heart. So I think an empathy map is a really great tool that anybody can use, regardless of your background or your training. And it's just putting ourselves into the shoes of that user. What are they thinking, feeling, saying? Having some fun with it too with your team, not doing it by yourself, really helps get that discussion going. My favorite part of these templates is the discussion that it drives. I spent the first half of my career PowerPointing to death, analysis paralysis, sitting, at the
Slide
desk.
45.
Yeah, right. Like version 72. Versus spending 30 minutes on an empathy map that sparks an hour-long conversation. And I don't know if it's something in the water there, but I've never gotten past version 10 of a PowerPoint since empathy mapping and sparking discussions. So to me, the slides write themselves when the discussion is candid and full. So empathy maps really allow for you to take stock of what you know about a user, but also it's a great way to drive those discussions. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And in our next video, we're going to do a demo of an empathy map so you can
nice.
learn firsthand from Christine and I how to facilitate an empathy mapping workshop with your team, how to run it on your own if you're a single contributor. We have lots of tips and tricks, and we're excited to walk you through all of the ways that you can use empathy to build products and services that people love and connect with your users.
Yeah. I have one more template that I wanna recommend because it's your favorite. And we've sort of remixed this exercise. It's called rapid ideation. So I know we probably turned a few heads and gotten some attention over ideation. There's actually not as much content out there on ideation as there is on the other steps in the framework. So we've included some fun games in the ideation section that you can play with your teams. One is rapid ideation, where you write a bunch of ideas on a piece of paper, pass them to a partner, and they make them better. And that can be played in big groups, small groups, and so on. So there's some really cool, unique activities and team builders in there that'll help your team start to build the skills. They need to be design thinkers without throwing the whole textbook at you and your team. So lots of fun stuff. And you mentioned Legos. We've got some cool activities and ideas for how to use crafts, physical materials like Lego to help sort of emphasize the value. These sort of tools really help people get out their feelings and what they're really thinking and articulate things in different ways that if asked just point blank or to write it on a piece of paper, you might miss some of that sentiment. So we've really been mindful about how to make the act of design thinking exciting and interactive and feel different. And we've also been very mindful about those tools to make it really easy for you to facilitate no matter what sort of environment you're in.
Which we love because at Design Ace, we were trying to no more boring meetings. We've all sat through way too many of them. So, this book is an outlet for you to discover how you can engage your team, build products and services that your customers love. And you can get it on Amazon. If you check out the link tree below, you'll find not only our Amazon link, but you'll also find our Instagram and our LinkedIn. Please connect with us because we'd love to hear about how our book has resonated with you and how you're using design thinking to engage your customers. I'm Andrew from Design Ace,
I'm Christine from Design Ace.
and we really appreciate you taking the time to watch our video today. Take care.